I just want to see my friends. I just want to see my loved ones. I want to hug them. I want to hold the love that's in my life. I want to hold it because this has been a year. So that's going to be Pride for me.
Hi, I'm Jason Sheeler, Deputy West Coast Editor of People Magazine, and today I'm happy to be joined by actor Javier Muñoz, actress Trace Lysette, and Executive Director at the National AIDS Memorial, John Cunningham, for our Stories of Positivity Pride panel. So it's been 40 years since 1981, when the first case of HIV/AIDS was officially recognized. I know you recently paid tribute to that date on June 5th. I would love to hear about how you feel public perception of HIV has changed since 1981.
Well, yeah, as you said, June 5th was the 40th anniversary of the first diagnosed cases in the CDC's MMWR report. And, unfortunately, more people now know what MMWR means because they've lived through the COVID crisis. And so we all sort of had that. But most of us living through the HIV crisis knew what MMWR meant, morbidity, mortality, weekly report. As we gathered on the weekend in the memorial surrounded by the quilt. So as we've said, in the beauty of the 10 acres of the National Memorial, but surrounded by the power of the quilt, it was really clear that in so many ways, so many of the solutions and so many of the responses to the COVID crisis are rooted in the AIDS crisis and so many solutions. And as I shared with the individuals that were there during my remarks, all of us that have taken the vaccine and had the shot of hope in our arms owe that shot to the AIDS crisis, because it was out of the AIDS crisis and activism and marching on the CDC and the FDA that got us the emergency use authorization, which is why the shots are able to happen today. It's also why we were able to get a vaccine so quickly, because so much of the research is rooted in it. And we, of course, saw Tony Fauci on the TV over the last 15 months. Well, Tony obviously cut his teeth and was rooted in the AIDS crisis. Unfortunately, the stigma that was placed upon the AIDS crisis has again reared its head with regards to COVID, stigmatizing this as a disease that affects certain ethnic populations, or that it was an us and them virus, that it only affected certain segments of the population that people felt were disposable. So we've made great progress, but we got a long way to go.
So Javier, you've lived with HIV since 2002, I believe. And can you tell us how you discovered your HIV diagnosis?
I got tested every 3 months at that time. I mean, that was the way to go. I had a whole generation of what I call my guardian angels, who were my mentors, who taught me, really to live in my skin with pride and dignity and integrity. And they were the ones who insisted on me creating that practice of getting tested every 3 months, and I never stopped. And so in a routine test, I found out that I was positive.
And you've spoken before about the depression that you fell into afterwards, but I would love to hear about how you came out of that depression and the support that you were given.
I think it's pretty beautiful and amazing, because I did fall into that cycle, and I was in San Francisco at the time, and I moved back to New York, and I really needed to have the support of my family. But before I was going to tell them, knowing my parents and knowing, just how to help them help me, was putting things in place first. And so here in New York, in the Broadway community, in the theater community, we are blessed with two organizations, BCEFA and the Actors Fund. And I went to GMHC first, and it was a social worker there who, once she found out that I was an actor, was like, you're in the union, why aren't you going to the Actors Fund? Here's the information. I went right to the Actors Fund, and that's when I met Keith McNutt, who was my first social worker, and he changed my life. And with his help, I got my insurance in place. I got my doctor in place, who I'm still with now. I started my medications, and with my doctor and Keith, I just pooled all these resources of support groups for my parents, phone numbers they could call, because I couldn't be their support system. I needed them to be there for me. And that wasn't a guarantee, right? There was always the possibility that I would share this with them and they couldn't support me, emotionally or even just intimately, right? But they did, and all these resources I handed over to them, and my insurance and my doctor in place so that my parents could just alleviate all that worry. And it's just about, how do we live with this now day to day? And that became the process, and it became a very open conversation with them, and a very loving process of learning for both of us, my parents and me. And really is a foundation for me on how I approach others now, in terms of engaging in this conversation, and what to nurture in those moments.
And John, you live openly with HIV. What was your perception before you were diagnosed?
I lived in the heart of the Castro district when I was diagnosed. I was probably diagnosed as a result of I'm 20 years in recovery now. I was I was, in all likelihood, was infected as a result of drug use. But the perception of the shame of that, as well as the shame of becoming infected a quarter century ago, when I should have known better, right? There was enough information out there. And it did take it. I had a very similar story to Javier's. It was my family that stood by me. They stood with me. They didn't judge me. I needed to open their eyes and inform them, and I could not be the one to save them. They needed to be able to walk this journey with me. And I was blessed in that sense, that even when it was as dark as it could have been for me, they helped to continue to put some light. So I think it tells us that we need to continue to wrap ourselves with community and with family and with loved ones that will support us. And that's part of, I think, the lesson that we all walk with out of this crisis. The AIDS community has so much to offer and to give, especially at this time in our nation, when we're in such a place of self-driven action, where people are all in it for themselves. And I'll share with you really briefly, if I may, the quote from Vito Russo. Remember that someday the AIDS crisis will be over, and when that day has come and gone, there will be people alive who will hear that once there was a terrible disease, and that a brave group of people stood up and fought, and in some cases died, so that others might be free. And that's what the reality. We've got a scholarship here at the National AIDS Memorial that honors Pedro Zamora. Well, Pedro was, he used the real world as his next stage and his next platform. He was already doing the work in South Florida within the Latino community and trying to do that. He used the real world, and he used media to take that step up. And I walk on the shoulders of so many heroes that went before us.
Well, this is a perfect moment to bring in Trace. And Trace, by playing Shay on Transparent, your role of an HIV-positive trans woman in a relationship with a cis man, this is groundbreaking television, to be sure. But I'm curious what you learned in preparing for this role to play someone who's HIV positive. What did you learn as you were HIV negative?
Well, wow, sorry, I'm like so deeply affected by everything that they were saying. Feeling a little emotional, but I think just having so many friends and chosen family members who not only live with the disease, but I've lost to AIDS, was enough to kind of inform the things I needed to feel in that moment with Jay Duplass, which was such a historic thing to see on TV. And it's something that, even though I am HIV negative and I've been lucky, I would use that word lucky because, as a 20-something estranged from my mother, sex worker in the West Village, it's a miracle that I don't live with the disease, but I have many friends that do, who are like family to me. And so, I think just my trans experience, my growing up in the 80s, I was born in 81, so I don't know what it's like to have a world without AIDS. And so I grew up with it. I grew up with them shoving condoms down our throats as, adolescents, and like that like constant state of fear every time you have a slip up and have unprotected sex, and having to go and get tested and then wait 2 weeks. And in the 90s, you had to wait 2 weeks before you got your results. And all of that informed Shay. So
who were some of the people that you turned to for for research or to bounce? Were you bouncing dialogue off some of your chosen family members?
Yes. A lot of what I pulled from was just the general pain of being a trans woman, dealing with a cis hetero man and being that kind of forbidden fruit, forbidden love toy that I have been in my own life many, many times. The AIDS piece of it was something I consulted with my HIV positive friends and family. But I think the bulk of that pain was something that is universal for all trans women who date straight men.
Another question I have for any of you, and Javier, I'll go to you first. A lot of this for just the population, particularly the population outside the LGBTQ community, there's sometimes we just get words wrong, and words matter today. And sometimes like just the difference between HIV and AIDS, for instance, seems to be something that can be easily conflated even in media. Javier, what has been your experience on just like, the difference between being HIV positive and having AIDS?
Well, they are absolutely two different things. And in my own personal life, whenever a friend or a colleague has engaged in a conversation and is clearly talking about HIV and is using the term AIDS, I pick and choose when and how to say, hold on, that's a mistake, and that's misinformation. This person is living with HIV, it has not transitioned into AIDS yet. And they are two separate things, right? That's why we have what I think are miracles of medicine, my one a day that keeps my viral load undetectable, which means I'm untransmittable. I can't give HIV to another person. And so it really is about having that kind of conversation with folks. And I think when the more I talk about the hope of that and the sort of incredibleness of that it really shifts someone's perception to understanding, right? Oh, they are two separate things. And there is something to feel hopeful about in this, and something to feel safe about in this, and progress. And I think that's a really important distinction to make, because I do still hear folks talk about HIV and mistakenly refer to things that are so ancient, to talk about like, you can't touch each other, you can get it from kissing. And it's like, whoa, hold up, pull brakes, stop, let's talk, right? Because these are archaic notions of things to where we are now. And I feel like the focus then has to, in conversations, needs to go to, so let's make sure that everybody has access to treatment. Let's make sure everybody has access to healthcare. Let's make sure that everyone has access, so that if you are living with HIV, you can live a life undetectable. And that changes everything. Mm. And so it really is a very important distinction.
So switching gears a little bit to visibility is so vital for this issue and many issues, frankly. And coming out, like it's many people see coming out as kind of a one and done thing. For me personally, coming out as a continuum, like it changes over time. Trace, what has it been like for you to come out publicly as trans?
Well, I think that was around 2015. So I've had some time to process it, but initially I was just trying to get through as an actress like every other actor. And then one day I was like, all right, I don't really want to censor myself anymore. I'm exhausted with this, living in character and living stealth and censoring parts of my life. So it was like a leap for freedom in a way, and but also very scary, because I was working in straight strip clubs at the time, and coming out as trans would have compromised my safety. So I mean, I was on TV for several years playing trans characters while I was still working in the strip clubs, which I think a lot of people don't understand that duality and what I was risking. But thankfully, I was able to get out and just be in my truth and relocate neighborhoods and do the things I needed to do to come out safely. Or, you know, again, maybe a little bit of luck. I don't know why I'm still here. I'm still here though. And it feels good to live out loud because I see things that have happened since Transparent, like, you know, Pose and other shows popping up where trans roles are more prominent and, you know, not just the guest star or, you know, sidekick, but like the main character. And those things are a result of shows like Transparent and all the stepping stones that came before that, like Dirty Sexy Money and, you know, Candace Kane and Alexandra Billings, who are out there paving the way before me. So I think it was just an evolution, and we should all, anything that's not evolving is dead. So we should always try to just continue to grow.
Well, you're certainly paving the way for others. Javier, what was it like for you to come out publicly as HIV positive, and how did that even, how did that compare, with even the first time you came out?
It was an adventure. Oh Lord. So coming out, when I came out as gay, I always really like to describe myself as like I'm so clumsy, right? I am the bull in the china shop. Like I will get things wrong. I will do my best to say and express and put a sentiment out there. And more often than not, it's just a little too much, And I brought my boyfriend home and was like, hey, my boyfriend, that's what's up, right? Just, no buffer. And so, that actually was a lot easier, in fact, than coming out with HIV. That journey took me 3 years. So I tested positive in 2002. And in 2005 is when I finally decided that, just like my sexuality, this is part of my identity, and I need it to be here with me always. I can't put it away. And partially that was due to the treatments at the time, because I was still, when I tested positive, we were still doing cocktail combinations. So I was like 4 pills in the morning and 2 in the afternoon and 1 at night, and so changing them up. And sometimes the side effects were so extreme. I've gone through cancer treatment, and I can say in my body, some of these pills felt like, chemotherapy in a pill, and the reactions in my body were so severe that I couldn't get on stage, and so it just had to be something that was so part of my identity in my life, so that every time I walked into a room, the folks that I'm working with, or collaborating with, or auditioning for, what's up. This is me, and this is what I'm coming with, and I'm still going to work as hard as I can. I'm still going to show up and be excellent, but this is me. And it took 3 years to find that, though. That wasn't like off the bat. It took those 3 years to really process and go through a lot of deep stuff to get there. And once I was out, again, bull in the china shop is like, I'm out. Parade down the street, ticker tape, this is what's up. So yeah.
So there is sentiment among many in the LGBTQ community and the HIV community. They've questioned the speed with which the COVID vaccine was developed, right? And and there's a lot of perhaps looking back on what if there had been as much investment with HIV. John, what do you hear? You're very plugged into this community. What do you hear in terms of an HIV vaccine, and do you think it's within reach?
Well, we had several speakers that spoke to this on Saturday. Head of research for Gilead, who's leading the way, and also played a significant role also in COVID. Sure, there's hope. There's hope that perhaps by the time we get to the next anniversary, 50 years, that maybe hopefully we'll have a vaccine. But really, we're also at a place where, as I said, it's a matter of getting to zero. It's a matter of suppressing the level of virus in the communities so that we can start to then target it and treat it. And that still has to do with public awareness and information. I would love to say that I had great hope. The reality of it is it's a genius virus. It's different than COVID. It's not the same as COVID or coronavirus. It's a genius virus, and it mutates and it changes, so consistently. So I think there's hope. I think there's hope out of COVID going back. HIV and AIDS care and treatment and research helped COVID, and I now believe that the research that happened within COVID is going to go back, and I believe help with HIV.
Starting to wrap up here, I've got one final question for all of you. Is like, how are you going to celebrate Pride?
Oh God, I haven't thought about that. I'm in Dayton, Ohio right now, taking a break from Hollywood. I had to spread my grandmother's ashes recently, and so I think I'm just trying to unplug a little bit and recenter what's really important in life, and maybe just silently celebrate my own journey.
That is worth celebrating for sure. And John, what about you?
I'm going away with my husband for a few days. He worked in the hotel business, and so of course in San Francisco, as many other places, he went 352 days without working. And then I'm also going to go to Pride movie night at Oracle and see Javier in the Heights this Friday night. I would be remiss also if I didn't think back and harken back to my first early days of Pride in San Francisco, or Gay Freedom Day, right? Which is what it used to be called. But looking at those marching down Market Street and so much activism around HIV and AIDS, because as they said, we're marching for our life. And I can remember vividly the last year that Sylvester in a wheelchair marched down Market Street. And it's all of those that I will remember. Pride for me, it's a little bit different today. It's so much more of just a party, and that's great. But I believe we still have so much social activist work to do that's where I put my effort to.
After this year, I literally am going to make it small and meaningful. I just want to see my friends. I just want to see my loved ones. I want to hug them. I want to hold the love that's in my life. I want to hold it, because this has been a year. So that's going to be Pride for me.
I think Trace has the best plan. I think I could do some recentering also, like for sure. Well, I know that, honestly, I admire each of you, and I stand on y'all's shoulders for sure, just like John was talking about, in the Castro, stand on other people's shoulders. So thank you. It means a lot to me personally that you all chose to do this, and I really revere each of you in the work you do. So thank you guys so much. You guys have a good day.
Bye.
You too.
Thanks.
See y'all. Bye.